welcome back to GameSpot's coverage of E3 2015. I'm Lucy James, taking over from Danny O'Dwyer here on the stage with Mark Alexi, the creative director of Assassin's Creed Syndicate. So, Mark Alexi, let's talk about what you're showing this year at E3. We saw yesterday at Ubisoft's press conference, we had a kind of Jacob, sort of a better look at him. And then at Sony, you kind of busted out with Evie, the other protagonist. What was it like to kind of show the world these two assassins?
Well, for me, I'm very proud to have shown Evie yesterday, to have revealed her to the world. This is something that's been really dear to me, and it's been core to the game that we've been trying to build. So I'm kind of relieved to finally be able to talk about both Jacob and Evie, because the story is very much about those two characters and how they grow up, how they evolve, and from their very different personalities.
Yeah. So is it nice to be able to play with the duality of the two characters, like play them off against each other? Because I mean, obviously they're gonna have that sibling rivalry.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's exactly something that's in the game. So Jacob is more, let's say, more brash. He tackles situations head on. He doesn't think too much, and he always does things with a smile. He's someone who enjoys very much what he's doing. Evie is more reserved. She's more strategic in her approach to things. She thinks things through. And you can imagine the clashes that we'll have between the brother and the sister as they explore this world of Victorian London.
So let's talk about the twins themselves. So they come from Crawley.
Yes.
And they found their way into the thick of it in the big bad city of London.
Yes. They were both born assassins. And things are not going very well for the assassins in the 19th century. The Templars are firmly in control of the Industrial Revolution and the city of London itself. So London is kind of the center of the world at that time. It's one of the biggest cities in the world. It's the center of the Industrial Revolution. And one of the things that we're doing differently this year is that the players are not unraveling a strange mystery. The setup is laid out before them at the start of the game. The Templars are firmly in control of London. You know who the Templar Grand Master is, and our two assassins decide by themselves to go and destroy the hold that the Templars have on the city. So it makes for a nice open playground and open setting for our players to engage in.
So it reminds me a little bit of the Borgia influence in was it Brotherhood? When you know who the bad guys are already, and you go take them down.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that you can do that in Syndicate is gang wars.
Yeah.
Basically, can you tell me a little bit about this? Because we saw a little bit in the gameplay trailer.
So one of the ways that Jacob and Evie will try to take back London is through the street gangs. So the Templars control the street gang, and through those gangs, they control the working classes. So one of the ways Jacob and Evie will fight back against the Templar is by creating their own gang, and then from borough to borough, conquer the city and expand the influence of their gang. And they're going to be a super important tool for the player in the game, in the sense that you'll be able to recruit and power them up, and they'll follow you around. So if you recruit, for example, five gang members, and you hop on a vehicle, because you can climb on any vehicle that you want, they'll hop on the vehicle with you, open the doors, get in, but if there's not enough space, they'll hijack a vehicle of their own. So you're moving through the city with your own gang. So it feels really cool, fresh, and different than what we've seen in the past.
So you mentioned briefly vehicles there, and they have, we're getting a very big GTA vibe from that. You know, you just go hijack it, run some people over. The question I have, so in Assassin's Creed typically, you can't kill civilians. You'll get desynchronized if you kill civilians. What if, say, I'm trundling down the street in a carriage that I've stolen, and I accidentally knock into someone who's on the way to the bakery or something?
You'll see that our civilians are very good at dodging those cards. So they jump out of the way, because I don't think it would be fun for the players to just desynchronize as they mow through civilians. So still, we keep that part of the franchise, but we've done a lot of efforts to make sure those civilians move out of the way for the player to have fun.
That is good to hear. No unnecessary
Absolutely.
casualties on your watch.
Absolutely.
So the vehicle's new. You're kind of reinventing the stealth a little bit as well. So
Yeah.
we're very used to this cover-based, hiding in the hay bales. But you're also bringing back whistling, which is a great thing that I really missed. So can you tell me a little bit about how you're reinventing the game that is so well known for hiding in the shadows?
So last year, Assassin's Creed Unity introduced a feature that was much awaited by our fans, the crouch. So, and you could snap on the corners of buildings. So what we're trying to do differently this year is we keep trying to improve the game. So we're moving to a soft snap instead of having a hard snap, so it's much more accessible and fluid. Fluidity is really a key word for us this year, making the experience feel more fluid for players, but also giving, for me, stealth is about manipulating the environment. So players have more tools now than ever. We're bringing back the whistle, but also we're trying to think about how our different tools can improve stealth. Throwing knives are a good example. So instead of just being used to kill enemies, you can throw them on a wall and create a distraction. So stealth gameplay has a lot to do with how you manipulate the environment, and players will have tools to do that this year.
So we saw in the gameplay walkthrough as well, throwing a throwing knife and not bringing down things on people. So there's going to be a lot more of that as well.
A lot more environmental usage for players to enjoy, and try to draw enemies with a whistle under one of those things that you can just throw a knife at and it falls on the enemies and kills them.
So let's talk about combat as well. So the Victorian era, that's when swordplay was kind of dying out a little bit. You know, you couldn't just carry around a broadsword anymore. So Evie especially has her cane, the sword cane.
Yeah.
So she's kind of got best of both worlds.
It's the cane sword.
Cane sword,
Our historian says it's really, really important. It's not a sword cane, it's a cane sword.
So how are you kind of basically like taking that into account, but still getting in some swordplay?
So it's an era more of concealed weapons, but it's an era of great innovations as well for combat. So our players will have a revolver, which is something that really changes the way you approach situations. When you have a six-shooter, I mean, there are many different ways you can approach that situation, obviously, but it's not a stealth weapon. So you'll attract a lot of attention if you use it. No. So there are counterbalance to
it's a risk
its
reward.
Power. Absolutely. Yeah. But in terms of weapons, we have brass knuckles. We've got the kukri knives that comes from the far side of the Empire, and we've got the cane sword. I almost said sword cane, but I'm
a bad influence. I'm a terrible influence.
But one of the things that changes about combat this year that we're trying to change is shift the opportunity to the player to take the advantage, take the offensive. So instead of staying and waiting for to counter enemies, this is not a winning strategy. You need to stun the enemies because they'll attack at the same time, and it becomes much more of a fluid dance between the enemies. And we're bringing back multi-counters, multi-finishers, and all that to make the combat more spectacular and enjoyable.
How difficult is it to kind of make your own mark on a franchise that is so well, it's revered, it's loved, and you have these familiar threads and strands in each iteration? How do you make your mark on that?
Well, we've been working on Assassin's Creed in the Quebec City studio since Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. So we take a lot of inspiration from that game. It was really, for me, one of the best ones in the franchise. But we brought to it a spirit of innovation. We were working on the Leonardo machines, the war machines, like the flying machine, the tank,
my favorite part.
And all those things. So I was really glad to have built those for Brotherhood. And the studio brings to Assassin's Creed Syndicate this spirit of innovation, which is why we have the rope launcher, which is an incredible tool for players to climb on top of buildings and zipline across the environment. We've got carriages, we've got all those things, bringing a second playable character. So I feel that this is how, through innovation and modernizing the experience, that we will leave our mark on the franchise.
And finally, I think I have to ask, because I live there, London. It's a great time period. It's a great city. I mean, what's it like kind of just, pouring more life into it?
For me, the more I look at London, the more I feel like we've had the opportunity to create one of the most iconic, represent one of the most iconic cities in the world. With the Thames in the middle is just so incredible, and it's not something that we've shown yet. You'll have to stay tuned to see more of it, but it brings so much incredible life into the city. It's filled with boats that I think will capture people's imagination. But it's also a city of landmarks. I mean, people, I know when I scouted London to build the game, I couldn't get into Westminster Palace, but it's something that we can put in the game, and there's there's a fantasy there to be able to go into the halls of power. Other things like the train stations, which I think will amaze people. They were the cathedrals of their era, And there are just so many things for people to explore. And we've had a lot of people from London come work on the game with us. Lydia Andrew, our audio director, was born just across Charing Cross.
Oh, brilliant.
And she puts so much detail and attention to making sure that every part of the city feels different and that it feels like her home. And finally, maybe on London, one of the things that I love the most about the city is how each part feels very different.
Yes.
So from Whitechapel, in which will represent more the poverty of the era, to Westminster, where you have like the halls of power, of politics, Buckingham with the royalty, where you feel that it's an empire. You'll have the South Shore, which is something that's completely different from what we see today with all the industries. So really have a different story to tell players as they move through the city.
Mark Alexi, thank you so much for joining me. Can't wait to play more of Assassin's Creed Syndicate when it comes out later this year. Which platforms, what date?
So it's going to come out on October 23rd on PS4, Xbox One, and later in the fall on PC.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Stay tuned here at the GameSpot stage where we will be having, well, next up, it's an iconic franchise. We're going to have some Star Fox Zero. Make sure you stay tuned.